I want to tell my therapist that I'm hurting myself and having bad thoughts, but I don't know how to tell them, and I'm anxious and nervous, but I don't know how to explain. First, I want to let you know that this is a very common experience that people have when it comes to things like self injury and suicidal thoughts. So know that you are not alone in feeling anxious and nervous talking about this with your therapist. So, first, when it comes to bringing up topics that make you feel anxious, I'm a big proponent of talking about that first, talking about your anxiety, bringing up the fact that there is something you want to talk to your therapist about, but the idea of talking about it is making you anxious. And then you and your therapist can explore that anxiety together. You can talk around the subject, explore why you're feeling anxious, explore why you're feeling nervous. Hopefully, your therapist will validate your anxiety, even though they may not know why you're feeling anxious necessarily because they don't know the topic. And hopefully, then your therapist will create a safe space that you feel comfortable sharing about your self interest thoughts and behaviors. When it comes to talking about hard topics in therapy, I'm also a very big proponent of writing things down if you don't feel like you can say them out loud. So this could be in the notes app of your phone. You could physically write it down on a piece of paper and bring it to therapy, or even emailing your therapist ahead of time if you have access to their email to make sure that you get all your thoughts, including that you're anxious to tell them about these things, down so that when it comes to talking about it, the therapist has the information and you don't actually have to verbalize the thing that you're scared of talking about. Now, I don't know if this applies to your situation, but I know a lot of people tend to be anxious talking about self injurious behavior and thoughts as well as suicidal behavior and thoughts with a therapist because they are worried about the therapist's reactions, particularly worried about having to be sent somewhere for a higher level of care. So, in this situation, you could say something like, "Hey, there's something I really want to talk to you about. I'm really anxious talking about it. Before I bring it up, do you mind going over the limits of confidentiality again?" It's also appropriate to ask about hypothetical situations. So after they go over the limits of confidentiality, you can ask questions like, hypothetically, if someone were to disclose suicidal thoughts or homicidal thoughts, how would you handle that? Hypothetically, if someone were to disclose abuse or self-injurious thoughts, how would you handle that? Who would you tell? What would be next steps? To gather more information to determine if you feel like this is a safe space to share about your thoughts. The reality is there is limits to confidentiality and there is therapist variability when it comes to those limits. Some therapists feel much more confident in handling things like self-injurious behavior and suicidal thoughts, so they are not going to break confidentiality if they feel like you can safety plan with them or you can keep yourself safe. Other therapists who are not as comfortable with that may resort to a higher level of care to ensure your safety. That's why I will always encourage clients to ask their therapist not only about their limits of confidentiality, but what steps they specifically would take in their comfort level working with certain populations that fall into those categories of limits of confidentiality. At the end of the day, I'm very proud of you for wanting to tell your therapist about these things. And like I said at the beginning, it is very anxiety provoking, but it sounds like you trust your therapist. And my hope for you is that whatever way you decide to approach it, you're able to be open and honest, and your therapist is able to help you.